In this episode of It Came From My Side Laundry Room, I'm going to do a quick review of a new Netflix show that's pretty awesome, and we're going to take a look at a book on my shelf. Stick around. Hello! Welcome to It Came From My Side Laundry Room. My name's Rob, and we're going to kick things off with a quick review. To start things off with this quick review, I have to be honest. I was very surprised at how good this show really was. And I'm talking about Netflix's Disenchantment. Created by Matt Groening and pretty much put together by his whole team of people from The Simpsons, like David X. Koenig and some of them, I expected the same thing. I mean, if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, then it's got to be a duck. So I assume this has just got to be The Simpsons, but in a fantasy setting. And in some instances, that's correct. But the show was so much more, and it really surprised me. Now, as I said, the show's created by Matt Groening, and to be honest, I haven't watched an episode of Simpsons in 15 plus years. Just guessing, but to the show's credit, you can say that. I mean, the show's been on for, I can't even venture a guess. I mean, over 20 some years. I mean, and that's awesome. I mean, props to them for that. But I just kind of stepped away from the show. And I used to be a super fan. But let's not focus on that. Let's focus on what Disenchantment is. Now, the story revolves around Bean, who is the princess of Dreamland. But she's not your typical princess. She's a hard-drinking, foul-mouthed, brawling princess. To the chagrin of her father, who isn't proper at all in his methods or delivery, and he's voiced perfectly by John DiMaggio. I mean, great job there, great character, which we'll get to without giving away any spoilers. By the way, this is spoiler free. You don't have to turn away. But the main cast is Bean, Elfo, who is a elf that was tired of the, and I mean this literally, the candy-coated world that he came from, because he just felt that there was more out there. And he was just tired of the singing and dancing of the Keebler elf-esque race of elves that he comes from. So you have those two, and then you have Lucy, who is a demon, who, again, voiced perfectly by Eric Andre. And I have to be honest, he's one of those comedians that when I see his name, I don't know how I'm going to handle it. Sometimes I find him very funny, sometimes I find him highly annoying, like with his show on Adult Swim. But he did a great job bringing Lucy to life as a somewhat contemporary character in this fantasy setting of drinking, smoking weed, cracking jokes, and being that devil on Bean's shoulder trying to lead her down a bad path. So you have the three of them as the core characters, and the first handful of episodes, yes, are very much in the vein of Simpsons, of gags and jokes, and granted, they're a little bit more adult, just a little bit. I kind of expected a more, since it's Netflix, let's just do it crazy, but is more restrained. I was surprised about that. But the three of them, once their characters started gelling and you started caring for the characters themselves, it was operating on all cylinders. And it was funny. And the fantasy aspects of it are great. You know, they poke fun at some fairy tales. There's, just fantasy land type of humor about dragons and executioners and the commoners and the king and the queen and the it's just very funny. I will say I laughed out loud a lot at this. But the show does something much different than The Simpsons. Now, not to take anything away from The Simpsons, or at least The Simpsons I remember, it did have feeling. You know, you would have those 5 episodes that were disjointed and, excuse me, just getting a drink here, disjointed and just humor, gag, jokes, boom, 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 roll the credits. But then you had those ones every once in a while that were, you know, full of emotion and feeling and made you feel something. The show does that, but towards the end of its sadly limited run, I believe it's only 10 episodes, it started to have a real story that you cared about. And when the credits rolled on the very last episode, I was beside myself because it was a cliffhanger. Not to give anything away, but things kind of go south for some of our characters. And I wanted more. I wanted to know what happened. I was left pondering and thinking about the continuation of the story. And that surprised me. I did not expect that to happen, especially in a show in the vein of The Simpsons. No offense to The Simpsons. But I highly recommend the show. It's really great. If you're into fantasy or Dungeons and Dragons, there's going to be jokes and gags that you'll love. But great show. Can't wait for the second season. Highly recommend it. Check it out. So, after saying all that, catch this commercial, and I'll be here when you get back.
Your presence is requested at the royal wedding of Prince Giesbert of Bentwood and Princess Bean.
Do you take this man to be your husband?
No! Oh my God. This is a bad time to be coming down off of that high.
So how'd it go?
I want to be in charge of my own destiny.
I want to see the outside world.
I want to get rid of all the diseases plaguing mankind and replace them with worse ones.
Being you're out of control. I don't even know what to yell at you.
I'm not so bad.
Well, you did kill that one guy.
I'd be fine if someone could just slide my head up a bit.
Isn't there a point in everyone's life where they need to go and figure out who they are? Whew, I'm a good butcher.
This is a pet shop.
Woohoo! What's this feeling I don't want to drink away?
That's hope.
I've got a bad idea!
What's bad about it? Oh, never mind. I see.
I'm so proud of you.
I'm drowning! I'm Elfo.
Remember, the trick to not getting swept over the waterfall is swimming upstream.
Got it. You can do anything if you believe in yourself.
Now that was just a commercial for Disenchantment. If you hadn't seen it, there's a little glimpse for you. So again, check it out. But anyway, now let's take a look at a book on my shelf with shelf life. Now, when I grabbed this book to talk about tonight, I was really surprised at what year it came out, because I didn't realize that I'd had it for so long and that it's had such an impact on my life. But don't get crazy here, it's nothing too special. It is to me, but it's Mickey Mouse with Robin Hood. Now this came out in 1980, And a hardcover comic strip collection, it was only $3.95 apparently, as they advertise other titles in the series. We'll get to those other titles in a minute. But as soon as you open this up, it's the classic art from the comic strips, which only slightly varied from the original cartoon versions of the characters that we'd all known and loved. As I said, this came out in 1980, and it's a collection of either the comics or the newspaper strips. I'm not 100% sure. But in it, it's a fanciful story that we've seen from some of the early Mickey cartoons, where Mickey makes a concoction to make his plants grow bigger. Unfortunately, they grow too big, and he then has to make a concoction to shrink them. And in the process, he shrinks himself. As you can see, here he shrunk, but he accidentally enlarged a fly. So it's Pluto fighting this fly. Look at that. Oh, that's a classic look. Fly, put up your dukes. And Pluto being scared. But within that, Mickey shrinks so much that he's able to go into a Robin Hood story. And of course, as a kid, I have to honestly say Robin Hood is probably one of my first literary characters that I loved. Granted, I never read the books, but with things like this and the movies and Disney's Robin Hood, we won't even get into Prince of Thieves, which was many years later. But, I mean, look at this beautiful color and artwork. But, I mean, this comic was right up my alley. And I read this more than 20, 30, 40 times as a kid. I loved it. And, of course, Maid Marian is Minnie. Even though he's not in the Disney universe, he's in Robin Hood universe, and everyone's human but them, which I always found weird in some of the early Disney cartoons and comics. I think it wasn't until Carl Barks came along where it's like, nope, there's a whole town of ducks called Duckburg, and there's no humans. But what makes this super duper special to me, I guess, and where some of my origin comes from, is you get to the end of the comic, which it's a very straightforward tale of Mickey meeting Robin Hood, and he's not the great guy that he thinks he is. He's kind of a jerk, and all the merry men are kind of jerks, and Mickey has to prove himself, and blah blah blah. Was this coming attractions. Now, what the coming attractions were advertisements for the other books in the series, and these were my first glimpse at Donald comics. And some of these I have finally had gotten in other collections, but I never was able to find these comics per se. I mean, look at this. That was Uncle Scrooge in 1980, before I really knew who he was. I mean, I think I had some of the old Gold Key comics. Here's Goofy Explorer's Caveman Island. But how I say this impacts my origin is just the one little tiny strip of Donald and Scrooge in these 3 little ads was enough to fuel my love of Donald Duck. I think sometimes I looked at the coming attractions section of this book more than I read the book itself. And I grew to love Donald just from the small exposure in this. So as weird as it sounds, I mean, this book means a lot to me. I've had it for 90, 2000, 2010, 38 years. But the coming attraction part was what kind of sealed my fate in being a huge Donald Duck fan. As you can see here, and as we've covered in a past It Came From. So, just a super quick look there, a super quick review of a great show. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave some comments if you've seen Disenchantment. Tell me what you thought of it. Let me know if The Simpsons are still good, because I have no idea. And if you like what you saw, subscribe. And until next time, my name is Rob, and this has been It Came From My Side of the Laundry Room. Catch you next time. Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked what you saw, hit the subscribe button for some more awesome videos. We also have a couple here on the side you might be interested in. And until next time, thanks for watching, keep being rad, and stay dorky.